Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. Today, I'm delighted we're going to be speaking to Janey McGill, who completed a 630-mile trek of the southwest coastal path, where she planted sunflower seeds to honour the 616 soldiers severely wounded as a result of the war in Afghanistan. During this podcast, Janey shares more about her life, the challenges that she's faced and overcome, and is also sharing more about her Anglo-Omanian expedition, which she's planning for December. Hi, Janey.
Hello there.
Where are you based at the moment?
So currently I am living in rural southwest France at a big chateau, an organic farm.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing. How long have you been living there for?
I've been here for a year now and I shall be moving on in September.
Ooh, do you know where you're going to be going?
I shall be coming back to London and then I will be off to Oman on an expedition for a couple of months.
Oh, fantastic. And I'm really excited to talk about the Oman expedition in a little bit more detail later on. But before we get into all of that, Janey, can you introduce yourself and just tell everybody a little bit more about you?
Yeah, sure. I suppose just trying to find my way, really. I think as we all are. I had intended on joining the army as a lawyer, but unfortunately I broke my back in a training accident for the Royal Artillery Gold Cup. So that very much put my military career on hold. And then after that, I set up an art gallery with a friend, a travelling art gallery. And I did that for 5 years. When I left that, I really became quite lost, actually, because my whole plan for joining the military had come unstuck. And once I left my business, really, I didn't know which direction to travel in. So I drifted for quite some time, a couple of years, trying different things. I suppose you could liken it to work experience as a teenager. Only I was in my 30s. So now I find myself in rural France looking after 8 horses and a blind dog.
I mean, there's so many different avenues that I want to go down. I'm not even sure where to start, really, because I'd love to hear more. Okay, let's start a little bit more at the beginning. So,
Okay.
Tell us, what was life like for you growing up? Did you grow up in the UK? Were you outdoorsy? Were you a bookworm? What was that like for you?
I grew up in the UK. My father was born and bred South Londoner, and he didn't see any benefit of bringing me and my brother up in London. So he took us out to the countryside, the Surrey countryside. And I grew up very much as a tomboy, playing with my brother and his friends, growing up with horses as well. So I had a little Dartmoor pony that I used to whiz about on. We didn't live always in Surrey. My dad actually, his work ended up taking him to Las Vegas for a couple of years. So I spent several years of my life over there, which was very interesting because I don't actually remember parents being around a huge amount. My brother and I used to sneak out a fair bit, sort of go and discover things. And then we came back to Surrey and I went off to University in Exeter and then back to London for 12 years, where I tried to fit in but didn't quite.
So where did the desire to join the army come from?
Well, when I went to law school, I really questioned it, and I got there and I thought, oh no, what have I signed up for here? And I went to a recruitment talk that the Army Legal Service was putting on at college, and I really sort of that was the path that I wanted to go down. It ticked all the boxes for me. So I joined the reserves for 4 years whilst I qualified, with the hope of then transitioning into the regular army as a lawyer. So that's where the army came from.
So what were the boxes that it was ticking? Was it the travel, the adventure, the physical side of things that were appealing?
It meant I could put my studies to use in a professional capacity, and money, as we're all told we need to do, and obviously we do need to do. Um, and it was the adventure, it was the purpose, it was the sense of belonging. It was all of those things. All of those things that the army say in their advertisements is what I was looking for. And that is actually what I found within the reserves. And it gave me a huge amount of confidence in my ability, mentally and physically.
What was it like being in the reserve? I mean, what sort of things were you getting to do with them?
Well, first of all, you have the 6-month recruits course. And at that time, my unit was doing all of their own training. So it's very different to the regular army or the regular reserves. So we were really getting out and about, and we were in the field a huge amount, and it opened doors for you. If you wanted to play sport, you could make the most of it. Basically, anything that you wanted to get out of it and you put the effort in, you really could. So, for instance, I loved horses, and nobody in my regiment had ever ridden in the Royal Artillery Gold Cup. So I thought, well, I'd quite like to do that. And so I went to my commanding officer and I said, can I do this and wear the regiment silks? And he said, yeah, as long as you're putting in the green hours, you absolutely can. So that's what I did. Unfortunately, came unstuck on the gallops in an accident, but it was still there for the taking.
I mean, it sounds, the Royal Artillery Gold Cup, and you did suffer, a serious back injury. What happened after that?
Well, I think it was probably 2 years, really, rehabilitation, because I fractured 5 vertebrae and had quite a lot of metal work put in. So those years was actually setting up my business with my business partner and recovering. And then that ended up where I was doing that for 5 years. And the intention was to go back to the army. It was an administrative error which led me to being discharged. I wasn't medically discharged. And at that time I thought, well, maybe this is just a natural ending. But it was after I left my business that it wasn't a natural ending, clearly, because I hadn't had enough of it. So I did try and reapply. I think I've tried to reapply to the military about 4 or 5 times, but it was not to be, unfortunately, because of the injury.
I mean, it must have been very challenging having to go through all of this rehabilitation, having your career prematurely ended in the army. How did you get through that adjustment period?
As I said, I drifted a lot, just trying to find something to fill the gap. And that was when I decided to walk the Southwest Coast Path. I think it was it maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And I decided so that I could fill the gap, because I really wanted to go to Afghanistan. A lot of my friends were going, and that was sort of my calling, I felt. And I didn't fulfill that. So I needed something to kind of paper over those cracks. So I decided to walk the Southwest Coast Path to commemorate the soldiers and the girls and boys that did go to Afghanistan and come back severely wounded, either mentally or physically. So I decided to commemorate each of those soldiers with a sunflower. And I walked the Southwest Coast, which is roughly 630 miles. And there were, I think, 616 severely wounded servicemen from that campaign. And I planted a sunflower seed for each of them. Actually, I probably planted more than that, because there were so many pretty viewpoints that I got a bit carried away sometimes.
What an absolutely sort of lovely idea. I mean, how much time did you give yourself to plan and prepare for a 630-mile coastal path walk?
I think it was about a month. I had intended to, because I have 2 dogs, I had intended to pack my bag, my backpack, and just hit the path and not really worry about where I was going to go, or I had a bivvy bag, and that would have, I was happy for that to do me. But then I told my dad and his partner about it, and they stuck their hands up straight away and said, well, we'll drive for you, which was great because it meant I didn't have to carry my backpack, and it was going to supposedly going to make it a lot easier. But when you have other people in the mix, quite often it's not as easy.
So when did you start the challenge?
I think was it July 2015, I believe. It ended up, I bumped into a retired Royal Marine, Taff, and he was walking Land's End to John O'Groats to Land's End, rather, in memory of his wife. And actually, I ended up walking with him for 10 days and sticking to his timetable because he was supported by the Royal Marines, by I think 42 Commando, B40 Commando. And by rights of that, I ended up walking with a lot of commandos who had lost people or had friends injured, and they would actually plant sunflowers, and they would tell me who they were planting them for. So it was pretty poignant for me, all of that, that I slowed the walk down and stayed with them, which was lovely.
It sounds emotional doing what you were doing. How did you cope with those emotions?
I think because you're walking so much on your own, there's a huge amount of time to think. And walking, I find I do go into a bit of a walking zone where I just get lost in my thoughts. And so I thought a huge amount about my past, about my future, about the conflict. And I met a lot of people from abroad who had been affected by this conflict. And we very much are painted a one-sided picture in the media of what happens to our British servicemen. But actually, it was Australian, it was French, it was American. And by meeting those people, you realise how small the world is, actually.
Was it also a time for you to almost, I suppose, adjust to what happened to you, dealing with your broken back, the end of your army career, wanting to be a lawyer? By the end of the walk, had you sort of not accepted it, but had you been able to draw a line in the sand about everything that had happened to you in your past?
No. I was hoping for the eureka moment where everything would become clear, but unfortunately it didn't. And it was just another part of the process. Once I got in the car to go home, that was it. I ticked that box, and it was strange because walking the path, I only ever wanted to look forward. So I was walking with another serving Royal Marine, a friend, and he said, "Look back, look at what you've done." And I was just like, do you know what? I just really don't want to look back. I just want to keep going. I take a glance now and again, and I think, my God, this is beautiful. But it was, I guess it was quite a metaphor, and I think I haven't drawn a line under it, even though I am still sort of trying to accept it.
How physically challenging was this for you? From your recovery from your back, was that impacting you on your walking and everything else like that?
Well, I'd suffered some other injuries from horse riding anyway, so actually, everyone concentrates on the back being the problem. And yes, I do suffer, but it's actually my ankle. I have very little movement in my ankle, which was a bit of a problem on the hills because there's sort of 4 times Mount Everest worth of climbs on that southwest coast path. So that was really uncomfortable. And then I suffered a few knee problems because obviously there's the first 60 miles is very much up and down, and then you go to Barnstable and it's completely flat on concrete. So actually my knee seized up, and I thought that I was going to have to stop because I really couldn't walk. But I was with a Marine, and he made me do some horrendous things, which was agony, but it loosened everything up, and I could continue. But as far as as far as the walking was concerned, it was just, I got fit as I went. And by the end of it, I was sort of trotting up the hills in a bid to sort of get it done, because I think my dad and his partner was sort of getting a little bit antsy about how long it was taking.
I was going to say, how were the dynamics having your dad and his partner there?
Well, my dad's awesome, but he's also a sort of a law unto himself. So it was a combination of trying to achieve what I was trying to achieve, but also to keep him happy, and the whole group dynamic happy. So we had quite a few arguments, a huge amount of laughs, because he's got so much time for the military and support. So it was a bit of a roller coaster with my dad.
How long did it end up taking you in the end?
It ended up taking 36 days.
36 days. Okay, so that's roughly how many miles is that a day that you were doing?
I think it averaged out to be about 18. I think something like that.
And you said, that you don't really like looking back, but once you'd finished the Southwest Coastal Path, you planted all of these sunflowers. Why did you pick the sunflower?
Because I think it's quite symbolic. It gets, well, as all flowers do, it gets its energy from the sun, but it follows the sun, and it's a proud plant, isn't it? And when they're all lined up, and where I am living in France now, there's sunflowers, one of the main crops, which I just love driving around, and they're all formed up like soldiers, and I just love it. I think they're a happy plant, and that's what it was all about.
Yeah.
And they grow really quickly.
Which is lovely. So you've done this incredible walk, 630 miles, planting the sunflower seeds, sunflowers for soldiers, an incredible way to honour and commemorate, your friends and colleagues and people who have risked their lives for us. Looking forward, what did you want to do next? Did you know what you wanted to do next? Did you know that you wanted to carry on sort of pushing yourself physically?
Yeah, I did. That's just become a given. So it's just something within me that I can't really explain. Though I did speak to a psychologist about it, actually. And he told me it was something called posttraumatic growth. So after a trauma, some people just have this sort of illogical need to push themselves. And I wonder, there's not a huge amount on it, and it's something that moving forwards I would like to look into a lot further. And there's actually a soldier that I'm speaking to about it. So when I get back to Oman, we're going to be meeting up and talking about that, because he's interested in that too. I mean, it doesn't have to be because you went to war. It could be the loss of a sibling that could spark this phenomena, I guess, in your mind to keep pushing yourself.
Did you agree with his diagnosis?
It wasn't a diagnosis. It was merely a chat in passing. But I would say yes. So the hardest thing I ever did was to have my first shower, and to keep myself, I was only sitting down as well, but to keep myself sitting upright was literally just mentally and physically so draining. And so that's the bar that I strive to reach to in my endurance endeavors, I guess. And I haven't hit it yet. So if I can do that, the limit's quite high.
How old were you when you suffered the accident?
It was in 2010, so I would have been, just 30, I think. Just
30, wow. So you potentially, or the post-traumatic growth, you are wanting to challenge yourself. You haven't felt as though you've reached your limits as you did during that recovery. So you decided to do a 90-mile non-stop walk. Where did that idea come from?
I think it was the Royal Marines supported me a lot on the Sunflower Walk, and I wanted to do something for them as a thank you as well. And I know that training, they have to go through some pretty brutal tests down on Dartmoor. And one of their hardest ones is the 30 miler. And I just thought, well, I wonder if I could do a bit more than that, and a bit more than that. So I ended up doing the Dartmoor Way, which I think is waymarked as a cycle route, but not quite as a walking route yet. And I just wanted to see if I could do it and raise some money at the same time. See how hard that was, and that was really hard. That really hurt my feet. My feet still hurt from that, actually.
Tell us a little bit more about the challenge.
So there's a chap called John Peel who does a huge amount of work for the Royal Marines charity, and he's a machine himself, a previous Royal Marine. And I contacted him and I said, John, do you fancy being involved in this? And he actually sort of ended up doing all the recce for me, and he ended up getting me 6 serving Royal Marines to walk with me, organised a minibus, organised support, organised other retired Marines to come with me as well. So that was a great trip. It was me and an old retired Marine called Harry that ended up doing the whole lot together. And Harry was great. He would stop for a cigarette about every 10 miles, and he'd keep going. But both of us were pretty broken by the end of it, to be honest. In fact, I vomited, and I don't normally do that.
What were you trying to do? Because you were trying to do how many miles in how many hours?
It was 90 miles in 36 hours, but actually we ended up doing it in 39 hours. We stopped. Well, I decided to stop and rest and chat for a little bit longer than I probably should have done to make that 36 hours. But really, I was pretty happy that I just finished it.
So pretty intense walking. I mean, I was going to say, you said your feet are still pretty destroyed. I mean, just talk us through either the high points of the challenge or the low points of the challenge and what happened while you were out there.
The high points are always the people and walking with the Marines, hearing what they want to do. It's interesting, actually, because, Afghanistan was pretty much wrapped up, and you join the military to be involved in conflict, and they were a little bit restless because nothing really was going on. And it's a crazy thing, isn't it? It's careful what you wish for, but when you join to be a part of something and protect your country and it's not happening, I think they were restless. And it's an interesting concept, really, that we're sort of after peace, but then the guys that are involved in it, need to get their teeth stuck into something as well. So that was interesting to think about and talk to them about.
What about the challenging aspects of it? What was the bits that really sort of? I mean, did you ever want to stop? Did you ever want to quit? Did you ever think, why am I doing this again?
Yeah, there were a lot of times when I wanted to stop because it was so painful. But it was just, I just think to myself, there's a lot of people out there who have done harder things than this, in the name of our country, and when they're out fighting, the things that they have to go through. So I think about those people when I'm hurting and I want to stop, and I think some people don't have a choice, and that keeps me going.
How did you end up breaking the challenge down? Did you break it down into miles? Did you break it down into sections?
I broke it down into legs. So I think there was, what was there? 5 or 6 legs, and they were manageable. So one leg might be 15 miles or 20 miles, but I didn't want it to be miles because there were too many miles. So I didn't want to go from 90 to 89 to 88. It was still too depressing to think about it like that. But if I took each leg, that was more manageable and digestible pieces.
And mentally, what's going through your head? What are you thinking about while you're out there?
That's a good question. It varies. I think, sometimes I'll be chatting, but then I think towards the end, Harry and I were just so desperate to finish that it was it was just thinking about finishing. But then also thinking this is only temporary, it will stop. And it really varies about what I think about.
Did you get what you wanted from doing the challenge?
In the fact that I raised money, and in the fact that I had good conversations and learned things from people, yes, but not so much that I could sit still. I had to, do more and think about the next thing and why and what.
So let's just talk about that in almost like a little bit more detail. I mean, firstly, massive congratulations. It's a huge distance that you covered and fantastic to raise funds for the Marines. How did you recover? I mean, you talked about your feet. You've obviously got problems with your ankle. You've got problems with your back. Do you do anything specific to sort of get back to full strength?
No, and rather stupidly, I didn't see a physio after that. So now I'm upping my walking at the moment. I am suffering a bit with my feet. And equally, stupidly, I didn't really see a physio for probably the last 7 years since doing my back. Until I started this job in France, I only started seeing someone about 2 months ago. And it's fascinating, actually, because we're both sort of oohing and ahhing, and I'm oohing and ahhing because she's hurting me, and she's oohing and ahhing going, oh my God, I've never come across this before, and sort of unraveling 7 years of not being treated, not having looked after my injury properly or my body. So it's quite an interesting process, but it's improving rapidly because I want it to improve. And also, if I'm going on to do this next big walk, I need to be in good form.
Absolutely. Tell us about the next big walk that you're currently training for.
The next big walk is going to be in Oman, and it's going to be crossing the Oman's empty quarter, which is roughly, well, what we'll be walking is roughly 1,000 kilometres across the empty quarter with a team of Omani women.
Why did you pick Oman?
I picked Oman because was in 2010 was quite a pivotal, 2011, 2012. Those years were quite pivotal for me because I had my back injury and I was seeing this major in the SAS. And I was also at a turning point of partying a lot. It was a turning point with him. He was a catalyst for a big change in me. Because I had been, just growing up and being a fool and getting drunk all the time and doing stupid things. And he turned around to me and said, I don't want the mother of my children to behave like you. And that was the biggest punch in the stomach that I'd had. And it really, that led to a couple of years of sort of deep introspection about whether I actually wanted children, looking at my behavior and actually thinking, what am I doing? What am I playing out? What do I want? So that was, a good few years of really sort of having a look at myself and unraveling the layers.
So where did Oman come in?
Oh, so beg your pardon. Oman was, when we first got together, he said, I want to take you on holiday. Where do you want to go? And I said, well, I've always been fascinated by the Middle East, but I'm quite frightened of it, actually, because of everything that I read about it in the press, etc. And so he said, OK, well, we'll go to Oman. It's really beautiful. I've trained there. I lived in the Middle East for a couple of years, and I think you'll really like it. So he took me to Oman, and it's a magical place. It really is. And I absolutely fell head over heels in love with it. And I knew that I'd always go back. I wasn't sure when or how or why. And now I'm going back after a series of other events and meetings and sort of a bit serendipitous, I think.
So tell us more about the challenge, what you're actually going to be doing and how it's going to work.
So this actually is not necessarily, even though it is a physical challenge, I have no desire to be the fastest person across the desert. It's not about that. It's about the conversations that I want to have, and I want to learn about their culture, because actually, from a Western point of view, or from what we're told, I don't necessarily think that we have it all right, and we're very quick to judge other people and point the finger and say, this is ridiculous what you're doing. And I think circumstance, background, history, tradition, culture, I think it gets overlooked sometimes a little bit, because we're always seem to be on our high horse and are a bit arrogant. I mean, we're not there yet with gender equality at all. And actually, we've been going through a lot more revolutions than perhaps those Arab countries have. I mean, really, Oman essentially didn't have roads, hospitals, or schools, pre-1970. So now, what they're doing and the opportunities open to men and women there is incredible, to have happened in really the last 50 years.
So what is the actual challenge? You're going to be having these conversations. Is there a set number of women that are going to be joining you, and how are you picking those women?
So currently I have a team of 3 girls, and 4 girls that we're playing sort of various different roles, and they've essentially found me, or we found each other. I have not put out an application process, or there has been no form or what's the word? Nothing. There was no right or wrong way of doing it for me. There was a couple of people that approached me who, via contacts, they said, I want to be involved in this project. And we chatted on Skype, and we got on, and it just evolved, basically. My team has just evolved. There was no set application process at all, which I like. And also, I think they were courageous enough to just get in touch, and they had big hearts, and they wanted change as well, and they're proactive, and they're excited about it, about their country. They're so proud of their country, and they're just real go-getters, and that's what I was after. Anyone who had to think about it, anyone who had to say, oh, maybe, I was just like, no, you're not in it. Your heart's not in it. I wanted people to jump. And if they jumped, they had that same kind of mentality as what I do. Just go. And that's what I was looking for.
So when's it going to start?
So it starts on the 1st of December, and we hope to finish on the 1st of January.
So just give us a little bit more information about where you're travelling from A to B, how you're going to travel. Is it going to be human powered? Or are you going to be using camels or horses? Tell us a bit more about what it's going to be like.
So we'll be walking from the southern part of the empty quarter in Oman. It's quite a contentious little area actually that we're starting in, and Ranulph Fiennes wrote a book about it, and there's lots of conflicting ideas about this place, whether it was the first marketplace in Arabia for frankincense. So it's the lost city, basically, the lost city of Ubar. And we'll be starting there. And then we go back on ourselves a little bit to another little town called Hashman, and then really into the empty quarters. So if you imagine the border of Saudi Arabia, we kind of handrail that, basically. I mean, actually, Oman's empty quarter does kind of handrail the border a little bit.
And so are you going to be carrying all your own stuff? Are you going to have a support vehicle?
Yeah, we will have 2 support vehicles, which will be carrying all of our stuff and will meet us at the end of the day, set up camp. We're averaging, or we hope to average, 15 odd miles a day, 30 kilometres a day. And I say, that we hope. That's the loose plan, as ever. You can never really say for definite what you will and won't be doing. Things are subject to change. So, but that's the ultimate plan, and to have those conversations away from everything else. I always find the conversations around the campfire are so much more interesting when you're not distracted by modern world.
So, in terms of how you're going to document the journey, is it that you're going to be journaling, or that you're going to be vlogging it or blogging? Like, how are you going to make use of the information that you're getting from this?
So I'll be making a documentary about it, and it will be social media documentary. I'll be writing a book as well. The normal avenues, I think, of communicating it. But I think it's really important to communicate the findings of this, because I think they're going to be surprising, maybe. I hope so, anyway, in a good way.
Yeah. And how are you funding the trip? Is this self-funded, or have you got sponsorship?
Well, I mean, this is ongoing, and I'm putting in plenty of applications for funding, and I've had plenty of rejections. There's been I have one sponsor from a company that I was due to be working with, but unfortunately it fell through. So Metris Leadership, they are sponsoring, and actually they have a special forces background as well, so military there. So I'm really, they have a wonderful culture, which I'm sort of fully immersed in, if you like. And there's a lot of self-funding going on. So everything that I'm working for at the moment is being ploughed into this trip. I've cut all my costs down. I actually eat very little. I don't go out. Everything is very limited now, because it's all just being ploughed into this trip. I've got a couple more applications to go in. The Transglobe Expedition Trust is one that's going to be going in shortly. So hopefully something will come from that. And potentially getting a vehicle sponsor as well, which will be a huge cost covered if that happens.
How much do you think it'll cost you to run the whole expedition?
With the vehicles as well, if I don't have a sponsor, it'll be about £30,000. I don't want any of the girls contributing. I just want them to be part of it. In fact, no, that's not strictly true. I want them to buy their own shoes. And we're just trying to work out if they actually need travel insurance to be traveling within their own country. But I certainly don't want, if there's a sort of emergency and have to get helicoptered out, I don't want to be paying for a helicopter, So that's the little things like that is that what we need to look into.
Yeah.
Equally, I'm applying for sponsors for product sponsorship as well. And obviously, if you get product sponsorship, then that lowers your costs in different ways as well. So all out, 30,000, but that's all variable. And in fact, my dad said that he would sponsor my camera equipment. So that's another little chunk to take off the total.
Good. It all adds up. It all helps. So you've got a couple of months to go and still until the start date. What sort of things are you focusing on?
I'm focusing on keeping my team together, because we've all met for a coffee, and I mean that's quite a tricky thing. And actually, it's been the hardest part for me, because everything else I've done is pretty much solo. I'm going to do it anyway, but it's way more challenging having other people involved and keeping them motivated and trying to get them together when I'm not there. So that's a big thing that I'm focusing on. We were all training on Strava together, and we chat on WhatsApp regularly as a team. So that's a big part for me.
Yeah. And how's all your training coming along?
Well, the training is, it's in France and it's in the countryside and it's really quite beautiful. And I'm just trying to get down the kilometres, basically. I've got my dogs with me as well, so they're always good motivation. But I did have to have a day off because my Achilles is getting a bit tight. And it won't stretch because my ankle doesn't move. so I think learn when to have a day off is quite important.
No, absolutely, absolutely. What do you think is going to be the biggest challenge that you're going to have to face while you're over there?
I think the monotony of it, and I think again it's the team element of keeping everybody happy, because there's no doubt that 1,000 kilometers of desert is going to get boring sometimes. It's quite whilst it's beautiful in the dunes, there's quite a lot of gravel flats which go on and on and on, and I think that's going to be quite testing. And just spending 30 days with people in those conditions, I think is going to be testing. And in fact, I'm hoping, provided all the girls agree, that we'll be working on a research project with Dr. Nathan Smith, who focuses on the mind in extreme environments for space travel.
Has he written a book called Extreme?
I'm not sure if he's written a book, but I know that he's just launched a website. I think it's called In Extremis. It's a website and you can sign up to it. I think it's only £36 to get a series of lessons on how we operate in extreme environments and a bit of the science behind it. And he does little videos as well. It's very interesting. I haven't got a huge amount of the way through it because I've got so much other stuff on, but it's definitely, if you're into sort of endurance and how it affects the mind and that, then that's definitely something good to have a look at.
Yes, there is a.
Do you know it?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I have heard of him actually. Oh, that's fantastic. So, how will you be working together with him then? How's that going to work?
Well, he's put me in touch with a PhD student who's also working on team dynamics in extreme environments as well. So basically, it involves a daily journal. I haven't seen the journal yet, but I think it's tick boxes about how you're feeling, and then there's a little notes section so you can write down how you're feeling, or what's bothering you, or what's bothering you about so and so, and the fact that they eat with their mouth open is driving you nuts, and that sort of stuff.
I think I've met this PhD student. Is she Lancaster based or like Manchester based?
Liv, yes.
Yes, I have. I met her.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, I ended up meeting her for a coffee because, so this, extreme environments is something I was very interested in for my dissertation. I ended up meeting her for a coffee, and there's another lady involved who also works with Nathan, but I can't remember her name. Emma, yes. But she's just moved from Lancaster down to Manchester. So, oh wow, that's going to be absolutely fascinating then. So you're going to be recording in a journal. What other things will they have you do you know?
I'm not entirely sure, but I'm also hoping to be working with a team who concentrate on what happens to the body physically as well. But that's to be confirmed. Other than that, I think it's purely the journal, and then maybe interviews afterwards, and then they will put together a report, I guess, and analyse the data and go from there. We'll see if we still like each other.
So, Janey, where's the best place for people to find out more information about you, the challenges that you've done, and your future challenge in Oman?
On my website, which is www.janeymcgill.com.
So Janey, just thinking back, about the direction that your life has gone, and some of the setbacks that you've overcome and the challenges that you've faced and risen from. What advice and tips would you have for other women who are going through something similar?
Patience. I think patience is the hardest thing. What has been for me, and just slow down. There's no rush. There's no right or wrong way of doing anything, and just knock on doors. I'm always knocking on doors and exploring things. I'm definitely not afraid of doing that. I think the most frightening thing about all of this is actually speaking about it, because it's so close to me. I want to protect it, but then it needs to be spoken about, I believe, and that's been a great challenge. But like going to the gym, you're not going to get a six-pack overnight. So just keep exercising the uncomfortable muscles, I think, because I'm not great at self-promotion at all, and I find it quite crass and gross. But it sort of has to be done. It's part of it.
Maybe it's just about reframing it. So it's not really about self-promotion at all. It's sharing the journey, sharing what you've learned to make other people think and to give them hope, so that they can be inspired and think, well, if Janey can do that, then what can I do? How can I push myself? What if if you can go and walk the southwest coastal path, planting sunflowers for soldiers, do 90 miles non-stop, and plan an adventure in another country in the Middle East, then it gives them ideas and suggestions about what they can do next. But it's difficult to put yourself out there, and it's difficult to tell people about what you want to do and why you want to do it. I mean, have you had much pushback from telling people about what you want to do in Oman?
Actually, as I've spoken about it more, the support has been really wonderful. I've not had anything negative as yet. A lot of people are just curious, I think, and want to know why and to understand why. And sometimes I find it hard to put into words, because there's so many things that I want to achieve out of it. And I get lost in the thought of it and the dialogue of it, and that's why I have to write about it. There's no, I don't think there's one sentence which can sum up exactly what I'm doing.
It can also be who you surround yourself with as well. I think as we get older, we certainly start getting more selective about who we let into our lives, who are the people who are going to cheer us on, who are the people who are going to be positive, who are the people who aren't trying to poke holes and emphasize any personal fears that you may have and the reasons that you do it. Have you connected with a lady called Felicity Aston?
No, I haven't, and I'm going to. I know one of the girls that was on her last expedition, and I know what she's doing. I followed it quite closely, and I certainly will do. It's just it's a case of time.
Absolutely, and there's I imagine you'll have a massive spreadsheet, a massive long to-do list. But for anybody listening, Felicity Aston's an explorer, an author, and a speaker, and she did the Women's Euro-Arabian North Pole expedition in 2018, where she took an international team of women from across Europe and the Middle East, and they set out to ski the last degree to the North Pole. And that was the core purpose of the expedition, was to foster a greater dialogue and understanding between women from Western and Arabian cultures. So, as well as doing that, the expedition inspired many women to reach beyond the expectations of others to fulfill their own ultimate life ambition. So almost very similar to what you're doing, but obviously in a different area and a different way of doing things. Well, Janey, best of luck with all your future challenges and plans. I loved your advice about having patience, and it is about having that consistency. Any other final words of wisdom you want to share, or anything else that you've learned so far?
Yeah, one thing that I did do, I'm very good at overwhelming myself and biting off more than I can chew. And the one thing that I did do for the past probably 2 or 3 years was I just made a commitment to myself to do one positive thing a day, and only one. And if I did two, then excellent. But then one thing just to get me to where I want to be. And slowly, that one thing a day really adds up to quite a lot a day. And it might just be an email. It might just be joining up with someone on LinkedIn, anything. But it just makes you feel like you're achieving each day, one little thing.
Absolutely. And that's such a great piece of advice as well. Just do that one thing, that one positive thing, one step a day, keeps you moving forward towards your goal. Janey, best of luck with the Oman challenge. I will be sharing all of your links to your social media, to your blog, to your website at toughgirlchallenges.com. But Janey, thank you so much for sharing your story on the Tough Girl podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Hey tribe, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Janey. Everything that we have talked about and all the links that we've talked about will be available at toughgirlchallenges.com. On that website, this is where there's more details about myself, my background, what I do. There's more details about the other women that I've interviewed for the Tough Girl podcast going back to 2015. There's also more information about the books that I've written, as well as the Tough Girl blog. And the Tough Girl blog contains all of the show notes. So that's more information about the women, that's a bio, and also a detailed description of what we've actually talked about in each of the podcast episodes. So well worth checking out. Now, during this episode, Felicity Aston came up. She's an absolutely incredible woman. She's a British polar explorer. She's received her MBE. She's an author, a speaker, expedition leader. And in 2012, she became the first woman to ski alone across Antarctica. That journey was 1,744 kilometers and took about 59 days to complete. So I first spoke with Felicity in 2015, and she shares more about that experience. It's actually really fascinating because we go back to learn more about how her polar career first started. We also talk more about the self-doubt that she had to get past and how she built up her confidence and what she needed to do to get to that place where she could take on this big physical challenge. And then most recently, we caught up with Felicity to talk about the Women's Euro-Arabian North Pole expedition, which happened in 2018. So very fascinating episode. Again, this was the expedition, which was about fostering greater dialogue and understanding between women from Western worlds and Arabian cultures. And hugely fascinating episode. So that's in Tough Girl Extra. So again, well worth checking out. We do have so this episode number is actually 180. So there's 180 episodes of the Tough Girl podcast that you can go back and listen to. That's probably like 180 hours of content. So that is a lot. That's a lot of stories, a lot of information. So make sure you go and check it out. All the information can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com. I am currently out. I should be in Mexico at this point in time, cycling the Baja Divide. If you want to know more about that journey, then please do go check out toughgirlchallenges.com. You can come and follow along with me on social media where I'll be sharing more of my journey. Hopefully, if I have Wi-Fi, it'll be coming out on Instagram at Tough Girl Challenges. Hopefully I'll be doing a few tweets at _tough_girl. But very exciting to be able to share that with you. I started in Vancouver on the 10th of September and have been cycling down Pacific Coast Highway ever since then. And I will finish my trip on the 21st of December before flying over to Melbourne. But we've got some incredible episodes coming up. We're going to be speaking to Carolyn Botterill, Bottlerill, on the 27th of November. We're then going to be speaking to Aurora Wild Women on the 4th of December, Keegan Randall on the 11th of December, and Ali Bailey on the 18th of December. 25th of December is going to be my episode talking about the Pacific Coast Highway and the Baja Divide. Incredible episodes. Please do go and check them out. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. The reason I'm able to put these episodes out there is because of the support of the patrons who are financially supporting me every single month. If you want to learn more about becoming a patron, then please do go check out Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Everybody who becomes a patron will get their name listed on a dedicated patrons page on the Tough Girl website. If you're a female and a $5 patron above, you can come and join the Tough Girl Tribe, which is a closed Facebook group where you can connect with other listeners of the Tough Girl podcast from around the world. It's a space where you can get support and encouragement to share more about your dreams, your fears, what you're going through, and it's just a hugely positive place to be in, and I guarantee that you'll learn a lot from it. $10 and above, you also, you will get your name listed on the patrons page. You're invited to join the Tough Girl Tribe, the closed Facebook group. You'll also get regular shouts out on Twitter. My handle @_tough_girl. $15 and above, you will get shout outs on the Tough Girl podcast. And $20 and above, you'll get a handwritten thank you note from me. And $25, you will get a fabulous Tough Girl buff to train in. Buffs will probably be being sent out. So if you haven't received your buff yet, buffs will be sent out in the beginning of 2019 because I'll need to do a new order for them. So thank you so much for all of your incredible support. I just could not do it without the women and the gentlemen from all over the world who are supporting me financially every single month. I like to look at it as thinking, or what's being described to me is, think of it as buying me a coffee every single month. If you love listening to the podcast, you listen to it every Tuesday, just think, I'll just buy Sarah a little coffee, $5 a month, or I might treat her for a lunch once a month. That's what I do if I've met her face to face. I take her out for a nice lunch to say thank you so much for all these incredible episodes, and that would probably cost like $15. So that would be absolutely amazing for you to get involved. So I just want to say a massive thank you to Kat Benger, Damiana Day, Abby Fitzgibbon, Shauna Fallon, Catherine de Ferrer, Rochelle Olsen, Dee Kaplinska, Patty Culp, Rebecca North, Virginia Nugent, Nugent, Nugent. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering your name. Dave Davis, Amy Burton, Hannah Mooney, Charlene Gibson, Amelia Turif, Turif, Sally Gibson, Stephanie Langridge, Gillian Pritchard, Nikki Harvison, Claire Davies, Linda Blakely, Catherine Harrison, Gemma Smith, Lisa McCoy, Amanda Jury. Phew, it's getting harder and harder. There's so many incredible patrons. I also do want to thank as well Katja Lunert, Launert, Zoe Langley Watham, who's also been on the Tough Girl podcast as well to share her story, and Sarah Bright. Thank you so much for all your incredible support. It's I get emotional when I start talking about it, but thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Take care. I'll be back with you next Tuesday for another awesome episode of the Tough Girl podcast. All right, lots of love. Bye.